Hello and welcome to another anime lore and theory video. I'm Shergok, your host, and today we are going to take a closer look at how the new world looked before Ainz and the other players had arrived, and how it would have changed if they never arrived. But before we're going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as say thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's get to the topic at hand. First of all, the political landscape of the new world would be completely unrecognizable, because the current situation of most nations on the western edge of the continent didn't even exist 200 years ago. Instead, there were simply other countries that were destroyed by the evil gods, or the demons, most likely originating from Yggdrasil Online in a grand incursion, again 200 years ago. However, nations like the Dwarven Kingdom and the Theocracy of Slain have existed significantly longer. But even the Theocracy of Slain is a human, or at least a humanoid creation. And we know this because they were founded by the 6 players, who later would be worshipped as the 6 great gods. And again, they found the Theocracy and they supposedly saved humanity from otherwise certain destruction. Then there's the Council State of Arkland, which was founded and is governed by the 5 dragons, the 5 dragon lords with platinum at its head. And it was created as an experiment by the Platinum Dragon to preserve and pass on wild magic, the original but increasingly suppressed magic of the new world. And without that intervention, Arkland likely wouldn't have existed at all. So in other words, almost all of the countries in the new world that you can see on the map from Volume 9 wouldn't exist without the players. And it goes even further. One must ask if humanity would even still exist without the players. Because according to oral tradition, the 6 players who arrived in the new world 600 years ago and later found it slain saved humanity from certain extinction. So without Slain, the natural predators of mankind likely would have wiped out humanity off the face of this earth a long time ago. It has also been confirmed multiple times in the Overlord lore that without the Theocracy of Slain, their godkins, their world items, and the associated power, other human nations would also have been destroyed and overrun, just by the world without any grand incursion of demons or hostile players, because humanity is just that weak. And when you consider that tier magic, martial arts, and similar systems didn't even exist in the new world beforehand, before players had arrived, humanity was even weaker, and to a significant degree. So it would have been almost totally defenseless against its many enemies. But this raises another question. If humanity was so defenseless, and even more defenseless, before players had arrived, in fact so defenseless that it could only survive thanks to Slain, the 6 great gods and tier magic, how did humanity survive for thousands, if not millions of years, before Slain and the advent of players? Well, it is known that humans of the new world subtly differ from normal humans, even down to their teeth and how they grow them. And they are all quite beautiful and attractive, which is odd for a medieval fantasy setting, so it's worth asking. Were the oral traditions of Slain simply misinterpreted? In our world, from which the 6 players came as avatars, everything was completely ruined. The planet's atmosphere had collapsed, and the surface had become a toxic wasteland. Agriculture only existed in domes or vertical farms, and if you didn't need lung replacement at the age of 30, well, consider yourself lucky. In other words, it's possible that the 6 players using a world item or wish upon a star settled humanity in the new world for the first time. So they basically brought them with themselves. They basically pulled back from the origin place from which they hailed and simply managed to spirit away some other humans. and basically reset them to their original condition before an atomic war might have altered their DNA. So it's possible that not only the 6 players of Slain had arrived in a new world, but they, maybe retroactively, brought other human beings from our own world with them, perhaps by using Wish Upon a Star, or another world-class item that we didn't know of yet, in order to basically rescue humanity, not from the many predators of the new world, but from the toxic wasteland that our own planet had become in the year 2138. And the differences in looks is basically explainable simply by assuming that these humans of the new world are simply just us, without the influences of toxic waste and radioactive particles. So basically, the New World humans might be our current generation standard model, and we by the year 2138 are so mutated due to environmental toxins that normal humans, without boils, skin disease, tooth loss from malnutrition, and so on and so forth, are perceived by Suzuki Satoru, aka Ainz, as beautiful and different just because they are healthy. Or perhaps these humans are indeed artificial beings, created by these 6 players using an item. Essentially a new species that only looks like humans. And their existence in the new world would then represent salvation, the rescue of humanity from the conditions of the old world. So perhaps it wasn't a last-time rescue mission. Perhaps these 6 players who would later be worshipped as gods didn't so much save an already existent human population in the new world, but simply introduce them to the new world. Which would also explain why they were worshipped as gods, because these humans are basically just NPCs that have gone rogue without their former masters. So what I'm trying to say essentially is that without these 6 players arriving 600 years ago, humanity would be long gone, dead and buried. Which would be a significant change. And then there's more. The conquest of the 8 great kings decimated the new world. The strongest warriors and races, all those confident in their own power, fought hard against the invaders. But after the dragon's power was broken, other powerful entities and species, like giants, the elementals, and other powerful beings had no chance on their own. Thus all of the powerful creatures and races were decimated, and as a result, the overall level across the new world declined because only the weaker beings survived. And this helped the humans protected by the 8 kings at this point immensely. And even after they were gone, and the theocracy had to recover, they could survive. And then a recovered theocracy was strong enough to defend them. So again, this decimation would have never had happened with the players never arriving. And the new world would be a much more dangerous place than it is today. And with that said, let's continue with the Dragon Lords. Without the apocalyptic battle against the 8 great kings and their near extinction, the Dragon Lords would still be the dominant species in the Overlord world. And I suspect that Platinum's father was the Dragon Emperor, and that he, through a failed ritual, accidentally summoned world items and players into the new world. Perhaps because he didn't understand what a video game was, and that the items inside of the video game weren't real to begin with. Hence why his transportation spell failed so catastrophically. In other words, sooner or later, other entities would have ended up in the new world because of Platinum Dragonlord's father's avarice and greed for any other valuable items inside of other dimensions. Again, this is just to say that if my hypothesis that the Dragon Emperor was greedy and peered into other dimensions in search for additional loot is correct, and it would have been absolutely hilarious if Platinum Dragonlord's father would have accidentally summoned not just normal humans from our own world in the year 2138, but also bits and pieces of defunct technology, like a CPU or a GPU that just wouldn't work without electricity and the matching software. And in other words, even without the players arriving, the world would likely have changed dramatically, and we might have seen a merging of worlds nonetheless, just like it happened in The Witcher, for example. And it also would have been quite funny if, let's say, a man in a green tracksuit, a priestess with a very textile-efficient dress, a noble knight lady, and Michael Bay's daughter would have arrived in front of him. Also, there's another change I want to talk about, because Evil Eye wouldn't be a vampire today without the players, because she only became an undead vampire princess because the Dragonlord Cure Elim Los Malvar transformed himself into an undead dragon through a massive magical ritual to overcome fear and to better face the invading players. And without players arriving at the first place, well, he would lack the motivation to do such a drastic step. And he might not even be able to, since tier magic and wild magic sort of merged or played off on another, and therefore the ability to use wild magic was drastically reduced for all Dragonlords. And in general, many other species pushed back by humanity would still be alive today. And of course, without the players, there would be no tier magic either, which means soul-based magic, the wild magic, would still remain dominant and fully usable. Okay, and that's it for today. And with that said, now it's your turn. What are your thoughts on the world before players, and what do you think it looked like? Let me know down in the comment section. And while you type, I say thank you very much for watching, and thanks to all of my Patreons who had chosen today's topic. And as usual, I say my special thanks to Other Daddy Other, ASK, Bad Girl Yee, Bad Burrito 316, Beezer, Ben C, Brandon S, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley 0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Din Pep, Dragonlord Placido Saxophone, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feralchivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Le Louche Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Lofthraiser, Merowek, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh Hell No, Normal Toad, Oh Kill, Overlord General Gaspar, Paddy Pentum, Personage, Ruru, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Q&A Caracos P, Shergox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Sir Axolotl, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rocket Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Xenokai, and Sonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.